If you need anything, let me know. That phrase seems helpful, but the fact is humans are garbage at asking for help. We all do it. We all think we have no breaking point, no point at which the to-dos will outweigh the to-dones, that we can pile on the issues and we'll be able to muddle through. We always do, don't we? According to a recent leadership skills research project from North Carolina State University, the top barriers preventing proper delegation in a workplace are lack of resources and unclear hierarchy. Without proper delegation, the workload surpasses the breaking point of the one in charge of delegating, and by that time, the frog is boiled, and it's too late to pull the car over. What if there already was a position at your law firm that could fill this void? One that has the resources, a clear vision, and provides a clear benefit to your business. A position that may already be filled at your firm, with an employee that's waiting to be unleashed into the forest of legal to-dos. That's what we're talking about today on Lawsome. Paralegals and the hunt for high-level assistance and work product in the law firm. Ready? Let's roll.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by Consultwebs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast for law firms that knows in camera doesn't mean inside a camera. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in legal marketing and law firm development. I am your co-host, Jake Sanders, and with me is the man himself, Mr. Paul Julius. Paul, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm excited because this is an episode that touches on something we don't touch on ever.
I know, it's only about lawyers, and then we realize that the paralegals are doing all of the work.
Like, there's a whole bunch of people that do things that we've never talked about.
And then the next show, Gary in the copy room, is going to be killing, because everyone has some guy in the copy room.
That IT dude that you only know his first name.
And I only know it by the ponytail that walks away.
Ponytail, yeah. Try resetting it.
I think, yeah.
Sorry.
Did you unplug it?
Clear your cache. That's it. We're making IT guys everywhere angry at us, which, folks, that's a terrible idea.
I know. Don't make the IT people mad. That's
God.
That's the takeaway from this.
That's right. No matter what else.
Let's clear our own cache and tell everybody what's on the show.
On the show today, we're going to talk paralegals, how to track, hunt, and prepare them. Up first is an article from the American Bar Association discussing the added value paralegals can provide to your firm, and then we talk to lawyer, podcaster, and Jedi Master of Paralegal Instruction, Keith Shannon. And as always, we subject our guests to the same questions we subjected our last guest to, with 5 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The article today is from theamericanbar.org. It's by Francis Pacau. And it's entitled, "No, a Paralegal is Not a Lawyer." Doing some research for the show, and I talk about it later with Keith, I was Googling, what's a paralegal? And there were so many, what does a paralegal do? How much does a paralegal get paid? Who's in charge of a paralegal? All of this stuff is popping up in the Google, and it kind of makes you wonder, maybe there isn't like a clear definition, and we totally find out later there isn't. This is a great article from 2007. I mean, this is from the ABA Business Law section, but it basically has a couple scenarios that explain your new paralegal at your law firm is doing this. Is it okay? And it covers some ethical constraints. So it starts really interesting. So Francis starts, let's face it, a paralegal can definitely represent added value for your legal practice, but beware the possibility of bumps in the road. She goes over like UPL, unauthorized practice of law, giving advice to strangers on behalf of your law firm, fee splitting arrangements, not understanding how referral agreements or any of those kind of transactions work, and then getting in the middle of that, or getting in the middle of establishing a legal relationship with a client. It's for me, the takeaway is it's interesting that all of this, there is no clear definition. There's clear dangers here, ethically doing wrong things, UPL, all of this. And in our previous interviews with folks who were doing outsourcing and legal admin work and guiding this section of the law practice, it seems like people are really horrible at delegation, really horrible at asking for help, really horrible at managing, really great at expert advice and doing their lawyer thing. But, it's the same string we're constantly plucking here. Folks aren't great at asking for help. So knowing that the paralegal is the person that helps the lawyer out the most, there's no clear definition. There's no clear roles, responsibilities. A lot of people aren't using the paralegals properly. And the way you explained it in the intro is hunt, prepare, and tackle. It seems like this wild animal because if you find one, they're there for 40 years because they're indispensable.
Right, you have to find a good one.
Right.
Which I think has this implication that there's a lot of bad ones out there. and after talking to Keith and after reading this article, it was very confusing. So I'm not really sure. What's a? I think a lot of the people who have this bad paralegal thing either like this article says don't have hiring standards or don't understand what they're supposed to be doing with them. Honestly,
yeah, I mean, and who here can raise their hand right now and say I have a clear goal always, forever? No, very few of us are clear blue flame thinkers. That are just leading the charge, just savvy, just razor sharp. We're all just kind of stumbling towards greatness, in some way.
I mean, and I think, too, there's one thing that people miss in here that I really like in this article. It's kind of buried in there. I mean, there's not a lot of pictures in this article, folks.
It is not a fun article to read.
But it says... most important, proper supervision requires that the lawyer review the paralegal's work product. So this is someone who can help you with stuff, but can't actually, practice or sign or do these things. So it needs to be reviewed. And I think this is what stood out to me. I've run into this not with paralegals, but with other stuff where, if I'm working with a designer, we brought someone as like a junior ad person or something like that. If you don't do proper oversight, have a checklist set up that they understand and you understand, there's a learning curve for everything. Everybody's got a learning and working style, and how things need to be done both for your office and for your particular state rules, whether it's bar rules or law or whatever. You're going to have to kind of work that out together. I don't think that's something where you're just going to drop it in there and be like, all right, kid, knock them dead.
Right.
Send me an email.
Exactly.
So
yeah. Send me an email when you're done with it. Keith lays it down later. Basically, the point of the key to using a paralegal properly is organization on the front end. I think that was the most interesting part because without a clear organizational structure around things, you won't know how you're supposed to delegate the work towards it. And to understand how people behave or learn, you said there's learning styles. Jeremy Richter in a previous episode was into Enneagram, trying to figure out how people want to get communicated with or how they'll be most receptive towards receiving messages. All of that needs to be put in, but without organization and without a clear idea of the process, you're back here at the ABA reading an article defining what a paralegal is to you because a lot of lawyers don't have a clear definition. But we get a clear definition. We talk to the professor himself, the Jedi Master, as we said earlier. I mean, he's a bit of a Yoda-like character, as is he likes to, I think he lives in a yurt. I mean, I'm really being presumptuous here.
Yeah. He has that speech pattern too, where
all the proper nouns come before the adjectives.
First, yeah.
It's brilliant, kids. You guys are going to really love it. We have a translator on board too. We have closed captionings too, where Paul just whispers what he thinks Keith is saying.
Yeah, it's strange. Part of the interviews we conducted as burst EVP sessions.
Yeah, and there's AMSR stuff too. We're kind of crinkling styrofoam in the back. I'm drinking fizzy soda. The whole thing is an experience, but I wanted to leave it from this article because Professor Shannon lays out the reality of what a paralegal is and isn't, and then helps law firms and lawyers realize the leveraging power that can come from them. Because Francis is saying that it's great that you'll save money, and most people say, I need a paralegal because I need to save time and money. But there's so many more benefits. And when we discover later that, you know, those paralegals, those legal admins, those legal secretaries that just became the case whisperer, they've been there for 30 years, 40 years. You become institutionalized because you're a part of the product itself. So it's cool to see that, and it's great to draw the distinctions up in between the roles and the people who are supposed to be performing them. But Francis ends it really, really great, and I'll end it here and we'll go to the interview. After all, it is the lawyer's obligation to ensure that the paralegal is properly screened, adequately trained, performs appropriate tasks, maintains high ethical standards, and produces a competent work product. Well, that's not a good ending, is it?
I think it was a perfectly acceptable ending.
Well, then let's go to the interview.
Lawson continues. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Since 1999, Consultwebs has been helping law firms connect with clients on the web, connect digital marketing success with firm success, and connect their business goals to proven strategies that help them get the most out of their legal marketing. Go to consultwebs.com to learn more.
And now, a Lawsome interview.
Keith Shannon is an instructor in the Paralegal Technology Training Program at Central Piedmont Community College in North Carolina. He got his BA and Master's in Journalism, his JD from University of Kentucky, and he's a member of the Kentucky, North Carolina, and South Carolina state bars. In addition to teaching paralegal studies, Keith is also an expert in law firm management and technology. When he isn't sniffing chalk and griping about term papers, Keith is hilarious, creative, an amazing voice on Twitter, as well as on his own musical theater podcast he runs with his daughter, and an all-around mensch. Professor, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So I was doing research for this, and I typed in paralegal into Google, and it's like, what is a paralegal? What does a paralegal do? Best practices for paralegals. I'm kind of thinking that there may be a little bit of let's start at the bottom. Like, explain what a paralegal is. What's the position? We talk a lot about specific positions, but I don't know if we have specific information on paralegals. So give us a background on paralegal. How does it fit into the law firm picture?
Well, first of all, the notion of a paralegal is actually kind of, if I've got this right, an amorphous term or an ambiguous term, I guess. And I'm looking right now, I'll tell you, I'm cheating. I'm looking at the ABA definition of a paralegal.
Oh, there you go.
And I'm going to read here, but
okay.
It's a person qualified by education, training, or work experience who's employed or retained by a lawyer, law office, corporation, governmental agency, or other entity, and who performs specifically delegated substantive legal work for which a lawyer is responsible. These days, first of all, a paralegal and a legal assistant, according to the ABA, there is no difference between those two terms. And I know that some firms and some corporate entities make a distinction between a paralegal and a legal assistant, depending on their duties. But we don't in our program that we teach, and the ABA doesn't. But the thing that I think that really distinguishes a paralegal in that definition is the fact that the definition says they perform specifically delegated substantive legal work. So that differentiates a paralegal really from someone who is a legal secretary or just a clerk or a typist. There's something more than just sort of robotic typing or that sort of thing that a paralegal is going to do. That doesn't mean that a paralegal won't do a lot of that stuff, just data entry and typing and that sort of thing. But what distinguishes really a paralegal is that they're going to have something more than just secretarial skills. They'll have some critical thinking skills. They'll have some knowledge of the law and procedure, criminal procedure, civil procedure, or bankruptcy or whatever area that they're working in. And they'll be able to add something more than just clerical or secretarial or typing duties to the whole law firm. So it could be something like answering discovery, and not answering, but drafting, helping draft responses to interrogatories. Or it could be client intake, a sort of, triage when a personal injury client might come in, and the paralegal would interview that person first and try to identify maybe a cause of action that the attorney should pay attention to, or a statute of limitations problem or something like that. So it goes beyond just clerical sort of skills. In terms of who can call themselves a paralegal, basically, pretty much every place in the country, anybody who wants to say they're a paralegal can say, I'm a paralegal. There's typically no licensing or real qualifications that you have to meet to call yourself a paralegal. And years ago, it used to be the attorney's secretary, who had been there for 30 years. When I started practicing law, I worked for a law firm in Eastern Kentucky, and we had Lois and Nellie, who were the two secretaries who had been there forever and ever. They were definitely paralegals, although they called themselves legal secretaries. Some states, like North Carolina, have come up with certification standards so that you can go kind of a step beyond. Like in North Carolina, anyone can call themselves a paralegal, but in order to call yourself a North Carolina certified paralegal, you have to have a certain amount of education and pass an exam, a 150 question multiple choice exam, and you have to have a certain amount of continuing legal education every year to call yourself a North Carolina certified paralegal. Mm-hmm. And then other, paralegal organizations like NALA and NFPA, they've got the certified paralegal exams and the paralegal advanced competency exam, the PACE exam. So there are organizations that can give you that notch of objective admission to a particular standard as well. So that was definitely a long-winded way of answering the question.
Yeah. No, that helped me out a lot because I thought it involved like jump school and going in behind the counsel and holding the line until the rest of the firm could get there.
We were so wrong about that.
I mean, I'm honestly, I'm a little disappointed, but this is very, very cool. Sorry.
Yeah, the amphibious assault stuff, I was like, that could be cool. But
I got so amped when you're like, anybody can call themselves one. I was like, awesome, I'm getting a patch.
That's right.
Tighten up my boots. Well, here's a question. So do you see lawyers that you talk to, do they understand what a paralegal is? I mean, like, I'm just kind of like, why did Google not know what a paralegal was? Is it just because this is this amorphous term? And do you think that hinders the performance in a law firm? How does that impact the dynamic? Is it end up being that if the paralegal doesn't have to have any certification, that they can just be the whatever? I mean, are they usually working on those delegated tasks, or are they usually overwhelmed because lawyers don't know how to use paralegals properly?
Well, there are several questions, I think, in that one question.
Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. So first of all, I think a lot of firms don't know how to effectively use a paralegal. They will bring someone on who, let me back up and talk about sort of our approach at Central Piedmont Community College to how we educate paralegals and kind of how we think they should be used, and then sometimes how they're not. My boss, Nina Neal, says that our program is sort of like really a first-year law school program. We have an associate's degree program and a diploma program for someone who's already got an undergrad degree. And they come in and we teach them basically how to critically think about substantive areas of the law. They will take civil litigation, criminal law, family law, commercial law, bankruptcy, legal research and writing. But what we do that's different from law school is, you get out of law school and you know how to think deep thoughts about the law, basically, but you might not know how to draft a complaint, which is not good. But I'm sure you've heard lawyers say, when you get out of law school, you're not ready to practice law. Well, we don't approach it that way. We've occasionally had an adjunct professor who will come in and say, I want to teach you how to think like a lawyer. And we will say, no, that's not our job. Our job is to teach them how to think like a paralegal. And so it's a mixture of substantive but very practical stuff. We have labs where they draft complaints and answers and responses to discovery and contracts and wills and divorce documents and deeds, and they do HUD-1s, if they even call those things HUD-1s anymore. But they get practical skills, but they also get enough of the theoretical stuff and the critical thinking that they can apply that knowledge to a particular situation and assist the attorney. Now, the attorney is always ultimately responsible for what the paralegal does, and that's contained in that ABA definition. The attorney has to supervise and be responsible for what the paralegal does, and the paralegal can't offer legal advice, can't create an attorney-client relationship, can't set a fee. But beyond that, as long as they're being properly supervised, they can assist the attorney in all sorts of ways. The problem is, as you pointed out, sometimes law firms bring in a paralegal, and really all they want them to do is to be kind of a runner to and from the courthouse to file documents, which is fine, but that doesn't fully utilize the paralegal's skills or training at all. On the other hand, we've had people graduate from the program here, and I remember one student, she joined a law firm, and there was a lawyer, and there was an office manager, and then there was her, the paralegal. And about 6 months later, the office manager quit. And the attorney said, you're doing such a good job, it's just going to be you and me, just the two of us. And I'm going to do the legal stuff, and you're going to do everything else. And when he wanted to file an appeal, he told her, he said, look, I'm going to write the arguments. You take care of all the details. You take care of all the rest. I don't know what to file where to get this appeal going. I don't know, where we do anything, but that's up to you. You figure it out and you tell me and I'll do it. And so she called me and said, I'm freaking out. And I said, no, we went over all this stuff because I have my legal writing students, believe it or not, write an appellate brief.
Nice.
And it's not going to be on the same level as a law student or an attorney appellate brief, my in terms of analyzing the law and stuff like that. But I want to be sure they understand what a case is and where to find a case and how to apply a case and how to apply a statute and how to do the research and how to write and even how to set up a brief. The requirements for the Word documents. There are strict requirements for those things. And I reminded her, I said, we've done all that.
Wow.
Just go back to your notes and figure it out and you'll be fine. And sure enough, they were successful. And she stayed with his firm for years.
Unreal. Wow. So, but it's interesting because I think a lot of people find themselves overworked, but maybe just working, and then they get over it, and then that becomes their life. And she could have said, I'm a paralegal, or, like the Lola versus Skadden thing. Well, I don't need to look at documented review, stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, well then you're not a lawyer anymore. And this goes into this other question that's not here, but California is looking in to non-lawyers opening up law firms or being part owners. Would you see this? I mean, these paralegals are ready. I mean, what do you think as far as paralegals ascending to this, law firm owner, this kind of hypothetical in the future? Because it seems like, your student, she could do it if she had to, the whole thing, and maybe even better than a lawyer who was just trained on the substantive stuff. She's had experience. I mean, what do you think about this California opening up non-lawyer law firm owned entities? What do you think about that?
do we listen to the same podcasts? I just heard yesterday, Lawyers Gone Ethical, Megan Xavier.
Megan,
She was talking about this, and she was saying, I think, I don't want to misrepresent what she said, but she said that it was sort of, she had mixed feelings. As an attorney, you feel kind of threatened, but then she can see how sort of access to the legal system is improved by this thing. And also, Washington State now has these legal technicians. I take a pretty conservative approach to it because we don't have those in North Carolina. As a matter of fact, I teach legal ethics as well to my online students. And one of the things I tell them is that you can't give legal advice. You're not permitted to. And here's the kicker, because if you have been working in a personal injury firm, say, for 10 years, and a client gets presented with an offer of settlement, then a client is actually probably going to ask the paralegal's opinion before they ask the attorney's opinion, because at some point, the client has had more contact with the paralegal than they have the attorney.
Without a doubt, by far.
Yes. And what's even worse is, the client will say, should I accept this? And the paralegal is actually going to know the right answer. They're going to know
and will not deliver it.
They can't say it. Yeah, and what's even much worse is when the client agrees to the wrong thing. They say, okay, you tell the attorney that I'm going to accept the offer, and the alarm bells are going off in the paralegal's head, saying, no, that's a really bad decision. That's the wrong thing to do. But they can't do anything about it because you can't give legal advice. Now, the attorney, the paralegal could walk into the attorney's office and say, hey, what do you think here? We've been at this a long time, and this sounds like a bad decision. And tell the attorney, or ask the attorney, why don't you go back and maybe talk to the client a little bit, because I'm not sure the client really understands this. But the paralegals a lot of times know as much as the attorneys in terms of how things are going to go and kind of the nuts and bolts of this stuff. But until there's some sort of like legal technician or that thing in California, paralegals can't do that stuff. They can't give legal advice. They can't be the attorney. And I think we as attorneys we study an awful lot of stuff during those 3 years. And then, when you work, you pick up a lot of stuff. And while the paralegals are well educated, I think there's a difference. My boss makes the analogy to a nurse or, and I think Megan in her podcast made an analogy to the medical field where, you don't maybe want a registered nurse doing surgery on you,
even if they're really feeling it, super confident, let me in, coach.
Yeah,
let me in.
But on the other hand, and she did make this analogy in her podcast. She said, if you need to get blood drawn, you don't want a heart surgeon in there charging you what a heart surgeon charges per hour to draw your blood. You want an associate's degree phlebotomist in there because they're probably going to draw the blood better anyway. So that's kind of the paralegal analogy. For those things where the attorney is really not needed for that kind of skill and depth of knowledge, then it's appropriate for the paralegal to step in within the guidelines of not practicing law. And that's a big area of concern for paralegals, the unauthorized practice of law.
Big.
You can't do that stuff.
Which is changing a little bit. I mean, depending on how these rulings go, exactly what practicing law is, could get refined to a certain extent.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, but looking at it, so like that's something where we're going with this too. Is like a lot of this involves this e-document review, some of this stuff like that, where for better or worse, it's getting taken out of the lawyer's hands. And, like the judge said, if it's something a machine can do, then we can't call it practicing law, which is, I'm assuming, still being debated in California and other places. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I'm curious with regards to that tech. how much does that play into the modern paralegals world? And on top of that, how do you help your students evaluate and decide on, what kind of tech should be present in their world and their workflows?
Well, as you, I think, know, I'm kind of a techie, nerd, and I teach a course in law office management and technology for the students. So I think just basic technological knowledge is vital, and I find that a lot of folks, well, certainly when they come into my class, they think they know how to use something as simple as Microsoft Word, but there are things that Microsoft Word can do that apparently are state secrets that only Adriana Linares and I are the only people that know about these things.
Exactly.
And I heard you talking about, I think you call it Zapier, I call it Zapier.
Yep.
A few podcasts ago. Things like that, as you've said, can just totally rock your world technologically. So just having the basics, knowing how to use that Microsoft Office suite, knowing how to use quick parts, knowing how to use, the Microsoft Word will set up a table of cases for you. You don't have to type a word if you know how to highlight something with your mouse after you've written an appellate brief. All you have to do is highlight a bunch of stuff, go to the table of cases page and press a button, and the thing will barf it right there in the right order, in accordance with most appellate procedure rules.
It will be, it will be appropriately barfed.
Yeah, yes. The barf will
to
be
the
every
law.
place it needs to be, the margins of the barf.
You need it.
Yeah.
But that was one of the things we talked to Ivy Gray about. She was so blown away, Ross Guberman, blown away that Microsoft Word has very simple things. Jess Birkin also said, if you do it more than 3 times, you can create a rule. And I think we just get so swallowed up, with, thinking back to that lawyer and just the paralegal who took the office manager's job as well, subsuming all those roles. I think you just get subsumed by everything. So, I mean, how do you, like you say technological basics, but how do you teach them to discern what they might need and what they don't need?
Because I haven't practiced law in a long time, I actually try to bring in kind of tech gurus from, remotely, virtually, from some of the podcasts that I hear. And I ask them to give the students kind of a basic overview of, what's available, what type of, practice management technology is out there, what specific calendaring technology, trust accounting, and those things, and how those things work together. I will do that, and then we will kind of dive into selected bits and pieces of technology. We'll do calendaring, and we'll do billing and timekeeping, and then we'll do Practice Panther type stuff, that's sort of cradle to grave stuff. But then we'll also do Excel, and we'll do Word, and PowerPoint, and those sorts of things. So it's funny. I've had students leave this program and then be hired by a firm, and the firm will task them with evaluating different practice management software packages. So the students, sit there and they get sample, subscriptions to all these different practice management technologies, and they evaluate them, and they have to do memos, and it's going to vary depending on what type of practice you have, and also things like the technological abilities of the attorneys. Now there is, there's a comment to some of the ethics rules that states that attorneys have an ethical duty to be technologically competent.
Mm-hmm.
And now in North Carolina, we have to have, I think it's an hour of technology CLE a year. So
makes perfect sense. Oh, and Paul just put it in the chat. Zapier is how you pronounce it. It's Zapier makes you happier. That's what it says.
You're right.
We're all like,
we stand corrected, sir.
There you go. Going back to the technology thing, one thing that I think is really important for technology and paralegals, and I tell some students this, and some students' eyes just glaze over. They don't get it. but some students' eyes get bright. I had a gamer in the technology class a few years ago, and that was just heavenly. I mean,
Yeah.
if everybody else was asleep, this guy was just firing on all cylinders the whole
Wow.
time. But for e-discovery, I tell students that if you are techie in the least, a paralegal is in a perfect position to actually fill a new role. And when I got out of law school, there were no new roles. There was no new Wild West to be conquered. Everything was old. But now e-discovery is this wide open field. And I tell the students, look, lawyers don't have time to learn tech. They're too busy being lawyers. So for e-discovery, they're going to kind of do the discovery part of it, but they don't quite know the E part of it. And then the tech folks aren't interested in the substance of the law. They don't know it. They haven't been trained on it. So a techie paralegal, like one who's gone through our program and has gotten a smattering of all those different substantive areas of the law and has an interest in it and can go ahead and take that knowledge and even expand on it, but be techie, that person can be the liaison between the legal and the technological world in e-discovery.
Love it.
And I think that's a great position to be in. You could be ruling the universe. I mean, have the keys, to the country if you're the legal guy who knows about e-discovery as well.
You have to have a certain mentality to want to get into that. I mean, Paul, dealing with AdWords and all the different creations and 700 different iterations, A/B testing, all that stuff. You have to want to be there for hours, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you definitely have to be interested. I'm fascinated because talking about being there with AdWords and Jake talking about your old firm and stuff, I've run across a very wide scale of how the different attorneys referred to and utilized their paralegals. I really think this is really valuable to hear the different specialties, capabilities, and sort of how to better utilize this. I think that nurse metaphor is very, very appropriate.
I think that firms do need to be more aware of how to use paralegals. It can make your life better. It can make your law office more efficient, but it can also make your legal practice and your representation more effective. If the lawyers are freed up to do the lawyer stuff and you can utilize a paralegal to help do the lawyer stuff and do the other stuff, then it seems to me that's really a win-win. And
Absolutely.
we've had paralegals. It's funny, we have an internship program, and we sent one paralegal to a firm, a one-person firm, a couple of years ago, and this firm didn't even have two separate rooms. The paralegal sits in the same room as the attorney, and this paralegal has changed that attorney's life and practice. And they went ahead and hired her. I mean, this attorney went ahead and hired her immediately, and
Nice.
she has just been singing this woman's praises for a couple of years now. And they would have to pry her loose to if anyone tried to steal this paralegal from this practice. It's amazing, and it's this attorney didn't have anybody. It was just her before. Right.
If you had one piece of paralegal guru advice to give our listeners, like something they could do, whether it, this could be for lawyers and or paralegals, ideally both, what's your one piece of advice that they could take away and do something with right now?
Well, this is not going to be Yoda-like. This is not going to set the world on fire, because it's so basic, but it's so true for attorneys and paralegals, which is organization is the key. If you're not organized, you're just not going to succeed. And if you're an attorney and you're not organized, it's more than just not succeeding. It's dangerous because of the missed deadlines and the problems you run into with being organized. So, and what I find is that occasionally paralegals not only have to be organized themselves, but they will come into a firm and have to organize the attorney. And that comes into, I guess, people skills and how you deal with that. And you might be working for 5 different attorneys who all are different in their level and type of organization.
Mm.
But that's the key. That's the bottom line and the most basic step. I think you can go a long way if you're organized, even if you're not necessarily skilled in some of the other areas. Organization will get you a long way.
Keith, what a really, it's interesting because I spend thinking about marketing, thinking about legal tech. How can you approach lawyers and law firm owners to make solutions seem exciting? How can you get them amped about business development? How can you? And I really think that maybe what you're doing is, look, you don't need more dreams. You don't need more ideas. You don't need more skills. You don't need more. What you need is organization, because from that can come the more. But it seems so odd that you'd throw a bunch of seeds at the ground rather than getting a hoe and making a line to plant them so you knew where they were. Because I keep selling inspiration. I keep feeling inspiration. People keep buying business development programs. They keep inviting coaches. And there's 10 coaches in the lawyer's office. There's 5 different marketers, 2 different entrepreneurial spirit shaman managers. And then there's the paralegal sitting outside being like, what are you doing? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so weird because we're so tech, marketing, software, solution. No, like you need to have organization first.
And like the people you've interviewed about tech, some paralegals go into law firms and the lawyers are all, let's get this new tech. Let's get this new tech. Let's try this. And then those applications and that technology just sits there instead of, you don't bring in new tech first because tech is just there to solve a problem. So you have to identify what the problem is and figure out a way to solve it. And if tech is the way, then that's fine. But I think a lot of firms and a lot of people work backwards. Mm-hmm. They bring in tech. And it's, I think tech is sold that way. You've got all the bells and whistles.
It's the dream. Yeah, they bring in the dream first, but they don't bring in the doing. And I think that it's sad because I don't want to add to that. I want people to have clarity, discernment. I want them to know the best ways to, develop their law firms and to get them managed. And I'm appreciative of you because this is from tail to snout. How paralegals are not just little lawyers. You're not making little lawyers. You're making something that exists outside to sort of bring accountability and just sort of, it's a great filtration device. Do you do consulting? If people want to learn more about you, how can they find you? Is there a way that you could talk to law firm owners and be a paralegal whisperer? How can people get in contact with you, Keith?
Well, it's fun. I do presentations, and it will probably, I've done CLE presentations on ethics and legal writing and stuff like that, and I do them for paralegals as well. And it probably won't surprise you that my presentations include magic tricks.
Yes,
and I'm completely serious. About that, because what's a presentation without something appearing or disappearing or a card trick here and there. But the best way to get hold of me is just by email, just keith.shannon@cpcc, that's Central Piedmont Community College, keith.shannon@cpcc.edu, and I'll be happy to take any questions or help out any way I can with whatever anybody has. And I'm not hesitant to refer somebody to somebody who can really help them.
Number 1, what was the last book you read?
Okay, I'm ready for this one because I just finished it last night. Although it's not going to be very intellectual and you will not be impressed, but it's Chris Kattan's autobiography. You remember the guy from
Saturday Night Live. Yeah, there's a lot of juicy, sort of sad stuff in there.
Right, "Baby Don't Hurt Me" is the name of the book because it's the first line in that song with the Roxbury guys.
The Roxbury, yeah.
But I love books that are nonfiction that talk about the creative process. I read one this summer about the making of Caddyshack. There's a great one about the making of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, right? The making and the flopping of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark.
Remember that? Oh, God.
Yeah. I just read one about Orson Welles' last movie that they've just kind of put together posthumously and how they did that. So those are the kind of books I like. And my daughter, for Father's Day, got me this Chris Kattan book, and I just finished it.
Awesome.
Sweet. Number 2, what is your favorite place?
My favorite place, well, I think I've told you, I was an at-home dad for a few years. I even wrote a book about it. I don't know if I have told you that.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a book on Amazon called "My Boss Wears Diapers." That
I love that title. I was thinking about it this morning when I was changing my daughter. I was like, "Are you my boss?"
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's
Yes, she is.
I was an at-home dad and I actually wrote columns for the newspaper, kind of Dave Barry humorous type columns as I was going through it. And so I put them together in a book available on Amazon. But so my favorite place is actually any place where my wife and daughters and I can all be together. I don't care because the girls are older now, 22 and 28. The 28-year-old lives in New York. 22-year-old is in Charleston, South Carolina, about 3 hours from here. And so any place they are, I'm a happy guy.
Nice. Cool. Number 3, what sites, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts do you regularly check in with?
Oh, boy. Well, yours, of course.
Thank you.
One of my favorites, which you'll be familiar with, is the Gen Y Lawyer podcast. Nicole Abood is a good pal of mine and has been for a few years. We met on Twitter and when she had a teaching gig, and so I started kind of talking to her about that and ended up on her podcast. And she does a great job. But also, the Legal Toolkit, Lawyers Gone Ethical. And also another plug, Fourth Row Center. Which is my podcast with my daughter. So
there we go.
About theater. Yes.
Nice. Okay, here's the one for the database. If you were stranded on a desert island and could only pick one condiment to take with you, what would it be?
Well, that leads me to the quintessential question, which you may get the significance of. Is mayonnaise an instrument?
I see that GIF, the Monty Python, and you're like, what is going on? Am I missing something here?
SpongeBob SquarePants reference. That's it. Yes, it's Patrick's. Is mayonnaise an instrument? But it wouldn't be mayonnaise. I think it would just have to be mustard because that would last pretty long on a desert island.
Maybe that's what it is.
Is there now? So we get mustard a lot. That's probably one of the most popular answers. So now I have a follow up for this. What type specifically, or anything in general, or are you like a Dijon? Is it French yellow? Like what are we talking about?
I'm from the mountains of eastern Kentucky, and if you say Dijon back there, you'll get beat up.
Shot. Yeah.
So no, just French's yellow mustard is fine.
Good to know, and I appreciate the safety tip. All right, number 5.
Yeah.
We've made it to the end here. After a long day or a long week at work, how do you relax and unwind?
During the summer anyway, I love to swim. And there aren't many things, believe it or not, that I say I love to do. I used to love to play tennis, but that was back when I had knees.
Yeah.
Now I can't do that, but I just love to swim. I think that is the most relaxing thing. It's like being weightless in space. It's just the coolest thing. And so if I can get to a pool and just, and of course, when I'm in swim trunks, that'll pretty much clear the pool. I'll have the pool to myself. Yeah, I love to swim, and that's kind of the best way for me to relax.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsomepodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawsome.